Okay, the reading for this week is the Memorial on Annexation of Feudal States and Memorial on the Burning of Books by Li Si. And the burning of books, of course, is a famous incident that took place in the Qing Dynasty in the 3rd century BC, where they burned all the books. And I'll put a link to some more information about the burning of the books below so you understand what it is. And we'll go over some of the details about that event in class. Okay, and this is by Li Si, but it's recorded by Sima Qian, one of the great historians, right, of the 2nd century BC. Okay, Sima Qian wrote it down, but Li Si is the author of the essays. Li Si, who died in 208 BC, was, along with the legalist philosopher Han Fei, we've already read some excerpts from the Han Fei Ze, so along with legalist philosopher Han Fei, was a student of Shun Ze. Okay, so I think this is the rival of Han Fei that I mentioned in another video. So Shun Ze, the great Confucian scholar, had his two greatest students, Li Si and Han Fei, went in opposite directions, and they quarreled, and they fought for primacy. Li Si was, along with legalist philosopher Han Fei, a student of Shun Ze, who said all men are evil, right? 人之恶 is his famous slogan. A student of Shun Ze and an official for the kingdom of Qing. The Qing Dynasty, review the dates if you've forgotten it already. Look at my video. The short-lived but very important dynasty of the Qing Dynasty in the 3rd century BC, when China was united after long, several centuries of warring states. Li Si was a visitor when Qin, the Qin Dynasty, conquered the state of Qin, conquered the remaining feudal states of the Zhou Dynasty and built a new centralized empire. Li Si was prime minister to the first emperor, Qing Shi Huang. As prime minister, Li Si had the opportunity to bring legalist philosophy. So remember, legalism, the word in Chinese is fajia, statescraft is another way to translate that. A theory of statescraft, a kind of Machiavellian ideas about statescraft. He had the opportunity to bring these ideas and this political philosophy to bear on the task of uniting and ruling the patchwork of now conquered feudal states of the former Zhou kingdom. Remember, there are 8 or 9 states that were all warring against each other. The Qin won out, and Qin conquered all of the remaining states. The memorials below are 2 examples of the policies that Li Si successfully urged Qing Shi Huang to follow. The memorials, in the form that we have them, are recorded by the Han Dynasty historian Sima Qian, who's the great historian of the Han Dynasty, lived around 145 to 86 BC. And these essays, these works, may therefore reflect a Han bias in either the choice made or the accuracy of the record. However, we have no alternative sources from which to compare the record and investigate the nature and extent of whatever bias may be present. These documents must then stand as some of the best records we have as to the policies pursued by the Qing ruler in imposing unification on the fragmented Zhou polity. Okay, and again, this essay too, the excerpts from this essay, come from the sources of Chinese tradition, compiled by William Theodore de Berry and Irene Bloom, Volume 1. I'll put the link to that book below so you can purchase it and read the essay and other similar works in full. All right, here's the essay. Memorial on Annexation of Feudal States and Memorial on the Burning of Books by Li Si, as recorded by Sima Qian. As always, the worksheets that you have a short version and a long version. I'm going to read the longer version. Before I do that, let me read the study questions that we will consider as we read this text. Question number 1. What common themes do you see in the 2 memorials? Question 2. How do the policies proposed by Li Si contrast with the way in which a Confucian official might advise his ruler under similar circumstances? Question 3. In what respects do the policies recommended by Li Si owe their ideas to legalist philosophy? Question 4. What arguments might you pose against these policies? Question 5. What arguments might you pose in favor of these policies? Question 6. Why is Li Si concerned about the control of history? And question 7. Do Li Si's concerns about history have any relevance for contemporary American or European politics? Okay, so can anything from these memorials, from these essays, be extracted and applied to our present contemporary situation? Okay. Memorial on Annexation of Feudal States. The foregoing view of the first emperor and Li Si is reflected in the following memorials as recorded by Sima Qian, the foremost historian of early China. That Sima Qian's record represents a Han view of the Qing past is significant. Okay, so keep in mind that this is all being filtered through the perspective of the Han dynasty. He who waits on others misses his opportunities, while a man aiming at great achievements takes advantage of a critical juncture and relentlessly follows it through. Why is it that during all the years that Duke Mu of Qing, 659 to 621 BC, was overlord Ba among the feudal princes, he did not try to annex the 6 states to the east? Okay, the kanji for Ba is hegemon. The overlord among the feudal princes, he did not try to annex the 6 states to the east. Why did he not do that? It was because the feudal lords were still numerous and the power of the imperial Zhou had not yet decayed. Hence, as the 5 overlords succeeded one another, each in turn upheld the house of Zhou. But since the time of Duke Xiao of Qing, the house of Zhou has been declining. Okay, so the Zhou dynasty is very long, lasts 8 or 9 centuries altogether. I forget the exact number, but very long. But the last 3 or 4 centuries, it went into decline, and we have the Warring States period within that larger Zhou dynasty. So since the time of Duke Xiao of Qing, in the 4th century, middle of the 4th century, since then, the house of Zhou has been declining. The feudal states have been annexing one another, and east of the pass, there remain only 6 states. Through military victories, the state of Qing has, in the time of the last 6 kings, brought the feudal lords into submission, and by now the feudal states yield obeisance to Qing as if they were its commanderies and prefectures. Now, with the might of Qing and the virtues of your highness, at one stroke, like sweeping off the dust from a kitchen stove, the feudal lords can be annihilated, imperial rule can be established, and unification of the world can be brought about. This is the one moment in 10,000 ages. If your highness allows it to slip away and does not press the advantage in haste, the feudal lords will revive their strength and organize themselves into an anti-Qing alliance. Then no one, even though he possessed the virtues of the Yellow Emperor, would be able to annex their territories. Okay, now into the second memorial essay, Memorial on the Burning of Books. Among the most infamous acts of the first exalted emperor of the Qing were the burning of the books, ordered in 213 BC. Okay, underline that date, remember it. 213 BC is the burning of the books, ordered by the first exalted emperor of the Qing, and the execution of scholars, ordered in 212. Okay, there's a Chinese term for this with for kanji, the burning of books, and the execution of scholars. I'll provide that in the description below. Ordered in 212. So 213 and 212 were the dates of these 2 events. The first was an effort to achieve thought control through destroying all literature except the classic of changes, the royal archives of the Qing house, and books on technical subjects such as medicine, agriculture, and forestry. The measure was aimed particularly at the classic of documents and the classic of odes. Remember, these are 2 of the books from the Wu Jing, the 5 classics. The execution of some 460 scholars in the following year was an attempt to eliminate opposition to the emperor by ruthlessly destroying all potentially subversive elements in his entourage. The 2 measures taken together suggest something of the habit of mind of the first emperor. as he was influenced by advisors like Li Si. But again, it is significant that the following document comes down to us from the ensuing Han period. So again, everything is filtered through a Han perspective here. Keep that in mind as we read it. Okay, here's the essay. In earlier times, the empire disintegrated and fell into disorder, and no one was capable of unifying it. Thereupon the various feudal lords rose to power. In their discourses, they all praised the past in order to disparage the present, and embellished empty words to confuse the truth. Everyone cherished his own... So he's talking about the Confucians here, right? Who have a tendency to extol the past and diminish the... degrade or deride the present. Everyone cherished his own favorite school of learning. Remember, there were the 100 schools of learning. And criticized what had been instituted by the authorities. But at present, your Majesty possesses a unified emperor, has regulated the distinctions of black and white, and has firmly established for yourself a position of sole supremacy. The hegemony, supremacy. And yet these independent schools, joining with each other, criticize the codes of laws and instructions. Hearing of the promulgation of a decree, they criticize it, each from the standpoint of his own school. At home, they disapprove of it in their hearts. Going out, they criticize it in the thoroughfare. They seek a reputation by discrediting their sovereign. They appear superior by expressing contrary views. And they lead the lowly multitude in the spreading of slander. If such license is not prohibited, the sovereign power will decline above, and the partisan factions will form below. It would be well to prohibit this. Your servant suggests that all books in the imperial archives, save the memoirs of Qing, be burned. All persons in the empire, except maybe of the Academy of Learned Scholars, in possession of the classic of odes, the classic of documents, and discourses of the 100 philosophers, should take them to the local governors and have them indiscriminately burned. Okay, so note that he's not calling for the burning of the books here. He's calling for all of those who are in possession of these books to be burned as well. Those who dare to talk to each other about the odes and documents should be executed and their bodies exposed in the marketplace. Anyone referring to the past to criticize the present should, together with all members of his family, be put to death. Okay, so note this emphasis on the present. Okay, and this... hold on, I lost my place here. This tendency to degrade the past and to extol the present, you see every few generations, right? You see this attempt to start anew and to get rid of history altogether and begin from scratch. You see it in the French Revolution, for example. I think we're seeing something similar here. Okay, so anybody in possession of these old books and people who extol the values of these old books will be burned. We are starting anew, is what he's saying here. Those who dare to talk to each other about the odes and documents should be executed and their bodies exposed in the marketplace. Anyone referring to the past to criticize the present should, together with all members of his family, be put to death. Officials who fail to report cases that have come under their attention are equally guilty. After 30 days from the time of issuing the decree, those who have not destroyed their books are to be branded and sent to build the Great Wall. Books not to be destroyed will be those on medicine and pharmacy. So underline the Great Wall here. I put a note, link to some further details about the Great Wall, and we'll want to remember the Chinese word for that as well. Books not to be destroyed will be those on medicine and pharmacy. So books of practical value are good, right? These old philosophical books that confuse people and lead them to extol the past and degrade the present are to be burned. Okay, so books on medicine and pharmacy are not to be burned. Books on divination by the turtle and milfoil, which have practical use, are also an exception. And agriculture and arboriculture are acceptable as well. People wishing to pursue learning should take the officials as their teachers. Okay, the officials, not the philosophers. Or not the scholars. All right, we'll talk about this more in class. That is all for now. Goodbye.